Hello and welcome back, and we have some big news today. Harris officially picked Tim Walz as the VP nominee, and Walz is a military veteran. He was in Congress, and now he is currently the governor of Minnesota. And as for age, he is similar in age as Harris. But this is crucial knowledge, especially considering it was between Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania and Tim Walz of Minnesota. And by the way, before we continue, if you want to join the 3%, make sure to subscribe today, like, share, whatever you want to do. And back to the video. And Governor Josh Shapiro was under fire mostly for his stance on Israel. So it seems like the pick of Walz is mostly to placate the anti-Israel faction of the Democratic Party. So it is interesting to note that if Harris will fold under pressure to the anti-Israel Democrat wing of the party now, will she continue to fold under pressure to that wing of the party in the future when the decisions are more important? Maybe if she's president, will she continue to fold to that wing out of fear that she'll lose support? That's just something to keep in mind. But regardless, she'll still win her safe states because Walz, again, he's not like a crazy pick. He's a pretty normal guy, I would say. He's like essentially pinned as a nice guy from Minnesota. That's what people want him to seem as, just some average Joe from Minnesota, where Shapiro was more of the risky pick. As Nate Silver says, Tim Walz was the quote-unquote Minnesota nice pick. He was supposed to avoid news cycles about the war in Gaza. He's a safe pick, and he knows a lot of people in Congress, so that might help him a little bit, especially since vice presidents are the presidents of the Senate. So in other words, she will still win her safe states, and Minnesota will also be classified as a safe state. Even though Tim Walz only has a 55% approval rating, she'll win Minnesota pretty safely after picking him. And on the other hand, Trump will win Ohio. So both of the home states of the vice presidents will safely go to each respective candidate. And you could see Minnesota went safely Democrat after she had picked Tim Walz. But on the other hand, according to the betting markets, Pennsylvania has gone closer than it was in the past, and Michigan has gone more and more towards Harris. So Shapiro was more for the Pennsylvania crowd, and Walz was more for the Michigan and Minnesota crowd. So now essentially we have our battleground states. But a few of them I can just decide right here and right now. New Hampshire and Minnesota will go to Harris, whereas Texas and Florida will go to Trump. According to polls, trends, and practically everything else, including the betting markets, this is how those states will all go. New Hampshire went to Biden, Maine went to Biden, Florida went to Trump, Texas went to Trump, and those margins will only increase for Texas and Florida. It'll get maybe a little closer for Maine and New Hampshire, but not close enough that it'll actually matter too much. Additionally, Colorado and New Mexico will both go to Harris. These states now have a 95-ish% chance of going to Harris, according to Polymarket. It's just slipping away from Donald Trump, especially after he picked Vance, and after Harris made the safe pick of Tim Walz. But we'll continue with Virginia. It has a 79% chance of going to Harris, and also recent polls have Harris leading in the popular vote by +3 to +4. And in Virginia, there hasn't been much polling conducted. The last polls were from weeks ago. So I guess I'll have to go with the betting markets, which say that Harris leads in Virginia, but not by as great of a margin as she leads in states like Minnesota, etc. So now Harris takes the 7-point lead, but we'll see this lead will evaporate. Starting with Maine second will go to Trump and the lead narrows up. And North Carolina will also go to Donald Trump. North Carolina has gone to Republicans pretty consistently in the past, especially Donald Trump. And we can see polls pretty consistently go to Donald Trump as well. This most recent poll has Trump leading by about +3. And I think the +3 to 5 margin seems about right for the state of North Carolina. So now we have these remaining 78 electoral votes that will decide this election. And I'll start with Michigan. So Michigan, according to the betting markets, now has a 64% chance of going to Harris. And this is because Michigan voters would not take too kindly to Josh Shapiro. So remember, Biden, who is a staunch supporter of Israel, got 81% of the vote in Michigan, but still 13% of voters voted uncommitted. So that's essentially the voters who supported Palestine in the conflict in Gaza. So basically that 13% would have essentially evaporated from Harris had she picked Josh Shapiro. But since she picked Tim Walz, she is winning the state of Michigan. She placates towards those specific voters, and she's essentially ignoring the pro Israel faction of the Democrats. And again, that's because, remember, Jewish people don't make up much of the country. So Harris sees that it's in her best interest to essentially ignore the Jewish population of the country to get as many votes as possible. So that's what she's pretty much thinking. That's why she picked Tim Walz. And if you're wondering, Minnesota had an even higher uncommitted vote. So he had to voice his opinions about the conflict. He played basically both sides in his response. And that's part of why he's seen as nice guy Tim. He really doesn't take a stance on many issues. And he kind of like, he toes the line a little bit. And he kind of plays both sides. And for that reason, he's more of the safer pick. And he gets the state of Michigan for Harris. So now with our remaining swing states, Harris is leading Trump and she'll win Nebraska second. The more urban part of Nebraska will like Tim Walz, the Tim Walz pick, more so than Donald Trump, and they'll go towards Kamala Harris. So she leads by +6 in this election. However, now we get to the West Coast where Donald Trump surprisingly does well, even though Harris is from the West Coast. So Donald Trump takes home the state of Nevada. We can see in polls in Nevada, it is even, but in most of the rest of polls, Donald Trump is leading in Nevada. And also, the betting markets do have Donald Trump in the lead. So we give Nevada to Donald Trump. However, Nevada is narrowing up a little bit, so we can't safely say it'll go to Donald Trump, but it'll go to Donald Trump. So now with the election tied, we go to Arizona, which gives Trump some more electoral votes. One recent poll has Harris leading by +1, but the average poll, this poll was pretty recent as well, Trump +2, and almost every other poll has Trump in the lead in Arizona, and the betting markets agree with this, where Trump leads in Arizona. So Trump leads 252 to 241 in this election. And now we get to Wisconsin. So Wisconsin is the final state in the Midwest. Wisconsin is a very important state with 10 electoral votes. Its recent polls do seem to be going to Kamala Harris. And the betting markets say that it'll likely go to Harris, but very, very much a tilt state. So Trump leads this election by 1 electoral vote with 2 states remaining, being Georgia and Pennsylvania. So Georgia, he'll do very well in. Georgia has consistently gone to Republicans, with the exception of 2020, where it barely went to Biden. Georgia will likely go to Trump in 2024. We can see polls also validate this. We can see polls have Trump leading in Georgia pretty significantly. And it seems like Trump will win in the state of Georgia. And now Pennsylvania, the state Harris passed up on in favor of Tim Walz and placating the pro-Palestine crowd. The state Harris passed up on, will Trump win in that state? We'll see here in the state of Pennsylvania, Trump is leading. Trump leads in this recent poll. Trump leads in almost every poll in Pennsylvania. And according to the betting markets, it is pretty much a coin flip. But according to the polls, Trump is in the lead. So I do say Trump wins the state of Pennsylvania, wins this election 287 to 251. And I feel like the Pennsylvania crowd will feel a little annoyed at their governor being passed up on. But in general, Trump wins Pennsylvania. Additionally, now I'm going to include a new segment. Say in the comments below if you want me to keep this. But this is basically a segment called Elections to Watch, where I talk about some elections that are happening, whether they be primary or whether they be like the House or Senate elections in the actual 2024 general election. But today, for our Elections to Watch segment, I'm going to talk about this Missouri House District 1. So basically, Cori Bush is a member of the so-called Squad, and Wesley Bell is her challenger. And he is supported by AIPAC, which is a pro-Israel interest group, and essentially he is favored in this election. Remember, Jamal Bowman lost the election, his primary election, earlier this year. He is another member of the Squad, so it seems like 2 members of the Squad will lose their primary election, because I do believe that Wesley Bell will win this primary against the incumbent Cori Bush. Additionally, in the Michigan Senate election, I do think Mike Rogers will win the Republican primary and Alyssa Slotkin will win the Democrat primary. These are the 2 frontrunners. Justin Amash, he was a former congressman. He actually was in the Libertarian Party in Congress, interestingly enough. But Mike Rogers will win in the Michigan Senate primary. Additionally, a Republican in Washington is facing a primary challenge because he wanted to impeach Donald Trump. So we'll have to also watch that election very closely. And let me know how you like this segment in the comments below. And thank you for watching, and subscribe for more.